420.
Yo, hey man, that was crazy. Oh,
I used to abuse that.
I recorded. No, that was actually ridiculous. Why did we do that?
Ready for this?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to start off by saying why I wanted to do this panel. I don't know if you remember Stitch, who just passed away, died by suicide.
Twitch.
Twitch.
Alan
Twitch.
Johnson.
Twitch.
Twitch.
You said Stitch.
Oh,
I was
okay.
connected.
Like
I was
Stitch.
Red Stitch for real, boy.
But yeah,
Crazy.
he was the person, like, I was doing my hair, he just came to my hair, and we were having a little conversation. She was saying how many men that we don't know are suffering. And I started to think about the men in my life, my brothers, my friends, who hold in things for so long and wait until they have no hope left and they choose to die by suicide. So I wanted to create a space for men to talk. Because a lot of times when mental health is brought up in terms of men, we assume, as people looking out, we say, oh well, he was okay, or he should be a man, or real men don't behave this way. He was happy inside, you know. So I wanted to create a space for men to say what they feel and how it is impacting them. So that's really how this came about. So I want you all to introduce yourselves. And you can say anything that's on your heart about your identity, what you identify as. So yeah, let's start off.
Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Mark. My pronouns are he, they. 24 years old right now. And I'm happy to be here.
Sorry. Sorry. My name is Jesse. I'm 22, 23 in 2 weeks. If anyone wants to get me something nice. And yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I'd like to thank Hanifa for having this space, and Hanifa for having this space, and for Hanifa's like continual devotion towards holding spaces like this for all kinds of people and all different identities, because it's something that we definitely need to have.
That's cool. Hi, folks. And folks watching. I'm Dion, and you know, I'm an emotional guy. And you know, I'm reacquainting myself with my emotions as we speak. So it's been quite a struggle.
Okay, I'm Joel. Hi.
Alcoholics
Thank you
Anonymous.
guys.
Hey, yo.
Thank you to Hanifa for having us here, having me here. Yeah, I would going off what Dion said, I feel like I'm an emotional guy as well. Even though my face doesn't show it half the time. And I come across very monotonous, but yeah, I actually am.
Oh no. Hey Jarrell, nice to meet you.
Hi, Gerald.
Afternoon again, everyone. Thank you to Hanifa for creating this space. There are spaces that we need, and we definitely, I believe that everybody given the chance to speak will speak. And I kind of what brought me to my passion for communication, which I express through motivational speaking, advertising, that kind of thing. So I am a father, I am a husband, I am a believer, and somebody's figuring out themselves and figuring out faith. So that's kind of where I am and what's up. So thankful to be alive and thankful to be being able to give and live.
But what's your name though?
Savior, nice one.
But I also want you all to not downplay yourselves, because we have two authors.
Oh,
Dion,
yeah.
Oh, really?
Jesse. Then we have Joel, who is a music producer as well, right?
Musician.
Yeah. Sorry.
Recording artist.
Recording artist.
And husband.
And husband as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Marco together, those
Exactly, yeah. Don't downplay ourselves. Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on, yeah. We have a lot of talents in this room.
Forgot to, you know, include the professional stuff.
Yeah.
Me holding the book.
I'm unemployed.
I don't have a degree.
It's like degrees.
They really don't matter.
They
Please
don't
tell that to
matter.
my parents.
Yeah, they don't really.
Tom and Dad.
So one thing I do want to say is like acknowledging this is a safe space. You don't have to share what you don't want to share. Feel comfortable sharing what you do want to share, and know that this is, an experiment. It's the first time we're having a conversation about mental health, well, men's mental health. So take care of yourself while you are answering these questions. You don't have to feel obligated to disclose all your truth. So yeah. So the first question I have, it kind of comes from what you all said. So you all said you're the emotional people. What does that, how, because you said Dion, you're trying to reacquaint yourself with your emotions. So I guess how does that portray for you right now? How does that look like for you?
Right.
And do you feel like you have to act a certain way while you're trying to figure out what these emotions mean to you?
Yeah. For me, it was very structured. And I think that's because I've grown so accustomed to structure, because that's the way that we raise and treat men and boys. So I literally found a list of emotions, and I said I'm gonna learn these, and every day, but through art. So every day I would write a different poem about a different emotion, just trying to understand what this thing is. Have I felt it before? When did I feel it? Was that the reason why I did what I did in reaction or response to it? And I recently relearned that too much of anything is a bad thing. So after having published my book, I was like, oh yeah, emotions first, always. I'm always gonna think about and I guess make decisions based on how I feel. So I went about life doing that, but being in a place where I didn't particularly want to be, that be in school and doing a thing that I didn't particularly want to do, I felt myself being very frustrated and upset, aggravated all the time. And you don't have to live that way, so I can't acknowledge my emotions, but I kind of let my emotions take control of me. And there's still a balance that can be struck. So though I am an emotional person, I also have to remember I exist in a world where a lot of things aren't perfect, and I'm going to have negative reactions to a lot of the things that I face. Sometimes I'm just gonna have to, even though this is something we're trying to say less, sometimes I still have to suck it up, because we still live in this world, right? But I am also making those spaces for myself, and within the spaces that I exist, where I can say, no, I'm not gonna suck it up. This is how I feel about the situation.
Yeah, to gonna go for that, when you started speaking just now, I started thinking about the emotions I experience, and then the experiences in which I feel those emotions. And there are times when you have to prioritize the experience which goes beyond yourself and above the emotions that you have within yourself. And I was actually the opposite, where I would always give to the larger, give to the collective, and suck it up or downplay, understanding that I could have my quiet time afterwards. So there is the same finding that balance of when do I put the emotions on display, when do I give to the greater, what's happening around me, understanding that if I were to respond as I want to respond right now, it would probably have repercussions down the road. Is it something, am I able to put it in my pocket for now, deal with it after, or do I need to not hide it, not cover it up, and bring it to the forefront now? So that's really weird.
Knowing when your pocket is full.
Yeah. And that's really what it is. But as you continue to kind of figure out yourself, you know what that full pocket feels like. You know what that weight feels like. So I realize no situation is the same. That's how I kind of handle it, reminding myself that I can't respond as I did that last time because there were different factors at that time. So I need to know how to move to suit,
And I think a really interesting place where I think I've landed, because I was brought up very emotionally. My emotions, and I think I'm really lucky in that way, in that I always had a safe space to cry, be angry, be happy, and I think coming down to the later years, I think I really learned it's a lot of emotional management, And I think that's the thing, especially with, well, I think it's for most people, I think it's police different in different genders. Whereas with a lot of men, like, a lot of the time, the world sometimes affords us space to navigate things without any emotional management whatsoever. And it may work in a negative way in that, like, we could be walking around with full pockets and, you know, never feel like we can empty them. Or sometimes a pocket may not be full at all, but we could take out the change and pelt it on somebody and lash out on somebody, because that's sometimes the structures that, like, are afforded to us. And I think it's really interesting in the way that we interact with women as well, because all the time women are always told to manage their emotions from a very young age. You have to manage, and it's to the point where then, because they're trying to place management of that, we then perceive them as overly emotional. So I think the thing that I'm still navigating right now is just like, again, like exactly the same thing these guys are saying. It's like managing my emotions. It's like, okay, how full is my pocket? Like, can I carry on going? Can I not carry on going? Should I react in this way now? Should I not react in it later? And just like, I like to think of my emotions as like a pressure cooker. And sometimes, like, what's really helped me is having things on a daily basis that just let out some pressure, let out some pressure, let out some pressure. Because that's sometimes all that we can do. But I think for men in particular, we need to find productive ways of letting out that pressure so that we can manage what's in there. Because I think the issue is that we're getting to points where we're getting to unmanageable points, to points where, like, there's too much going on that we can't manage, and we hurt people, we hurt ourselves. And I think it's about having things in daily life that help us, you know, allow out some pressure, like, you know, going for a run, like we did something. And then when things do get big, that's when the real test comes with management, because you do not want to, like, you know, hurt somebody or yourself. So for me, it's a lot of emotional management, and on a daily basis trying to, you know, have some quiet time or have something that helps me realign.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you started this conversation on with reacquainting yourself with your emotions, because I always used to intellectualize what my emotions, you know, and convincing myself that I would have felt them because I would have been able to identify them, you know, use the emotional color wheel to be able to identify what emotion I'm feeling right now, and then very quickly putting that in a box. Because, like, say, Simon was saying, you know, maybe reacting in this moment would cause repercussions, and I don't know if it's for my personal reasons or systemic reasons, but I grew up not wanting to cause any repercussion.
No conflict.
Yeah, no conflict, right? So right now, what it looks like for me to be trying to reacquaint myself with my emotions, it's just feeling them, you know, like kind of using Jesse's example, letting the pressure cooker build up, but with the lid off. So the pressure is building and just going up, and I'm using the same color wheel, but instead of identifying and classifying and trying to go down and analyzing and going down in my history and interpreting, I'm just saying, okay, I felt this way, alright, moving on. Like, I just would meditate and allow myself to feel emotions that wash over me and go through me. Right? So that's how I've been trying to reacquaint myself with my emotion. And I've just been looking, that looks like just living my life, just trying to not try to hold control over everything, and give everybody else and myself, you know, space to feel instead of understand my emotions. To just feel it and go forward.
I feel like I grew up on two ends, having like my dad live abroad and my mom live here, and I live with my mom. It's like you live in a house full of women. You're taught, you know, you show your emotions, you express it, you know, you say everything that's on your mind, you get that out there, because bottling it in is not healthy. But then you have on my dad's side where it's like the other thing where he's telling you, you know, sticks and stones will break your bones, so words will never hurt you.
Nah, bro.
And it's like, no, like, it's like, what, so I can't show emotion when I'm not being physically hurt, like emotional hurt doesn't exist. And it's not to say that my dad wasn't there like when I tell you my dad gives you that space to be emotional, he does. He just has a very different way of doing it. But I would actually say he gave me more of a space than with my mom. Because my mom had to feel as though she was giving both sides. You know, she has to be the father and the mother because it was her that I was living with my entire life. My dad came probably down here like 4 or 5 times and probably went up by him equally 4 or 5 times across the years. But with that being said, I had to like learn from a young age like how to express my emotions properly, I would say. Because as I said with my mom, it was let it out. You know, whatever you're feeling, say what it is, get it out there. But sometimes that doesn't translate well, especially as a child. So actually from a young age I had to go therapy. Like I had a problem with my face, not knowing how to express myself because my face is always like straight as a child, regardless of any other emotion that's going through. So she actually took me to a therapist to teach me, okay, so this is like, so saying with the color wheel, this is what you, this is what you're experiencing.
This is sad.
This is happy. This is a picture of how you look when you're happy. Can you make a happy face? Can you make a sad face? Can you make a angry face? A confused face? And I had to actually teach myself how to do these things. Now I have the opposite, where I can't hide how I feel.
To express it.
To express it. So it's now learning to rein that in a little bit and finding that balance between what is too expressive, what is like just expressive enough.
But then also who determines?
Exactly.
I
But
was
it's
that
like
too, because like
my own personal, I guess it's like my own personal emotional intelligence, I guess. Learning what feels too much for me and what feels like too much to be putting out there. And as Savian was saying, like learning when to put some things in the pocket and hold back and put the community in front of self. But also learning when to put self first as well.
Exactly. Yeah, because a lot of things I'm like, what you're saying, the main theme that I'm kind of getting is that one, control over emotions, control of what you can and cannot share, when you can and when you cannot share. Do you feel like that is part of the process of? Because I don't want to generalize, man, because of course everybody, you know, is brought up a different way. But when you think of like to be a man, a real man, when people define manhood, when people say men should be this way, how does that fit into the idea of like, okay, this emotion right now I'm going to keep in my pocket, this emotion right now I'm going to show? Do you feel like the policing, yes, of men's emotion is I guess I can say, how has the policing of men's emotion also influenced when you show what emotion? If that makes sense.
For me, like the general policing, it could be just like just a general policing of emotional expression. Sometimes, like a big thing I struggle with is celebrating when I've done something, or like feeling good about myself, and you know, I've done something that I wanted to do. At the same time, a lot of men struggle with, you know, expressing their emotions when they're sad. And like I think it's generally a whole thing of like it's about, I think it's not just one emotion that's over this. I think it's emotion on a whole. Like I think like happiness, like it's so like a lot of the times what a lot of people do is like whenever someone's happy, no matter who they are, the first they say, "What are they so happy for, boy?" And like I feel like again that's policing. That's saying why you're expressing this happiness. And I think it happens to men. I think happiness, sadness. I think we're also being taught how to express anger in the wrong way, because a lot of the time, like I think anger and frustration, when that emotion ultimately comes out, it's with all the emotions that we've like had to bottle up. So it becomes
Surface level
violent.
emotions.
Yeah, it becomes violent. And I think like if we are allowed spaces to manage and express our emotions or like as they come, then like anger and frustration can be channeled in a much more different light. Because I think the thing about anger is like something frustrates you, that's what boils the pot the most. And then everything else that was in there is saying, it's my time to come out now. And it comes out in that angry emotion. It's the same way like when you get that relief from something, it could be very much like you had a lot on you, so when you feel relieved, it comes out. But I think that like it's the policing of expression of that emotion on a whole that could lead to a lot of damage.
Yeah, that policing of expression, I think, is where we find a lot of like knowledge about how, or a lot of understanding about what is stopping men from communicating their emotions, from feeling their emotions, because it's, I mean, you could think of every child as like a blank slate, and some people have different views on that. I'm not sure if I totally believe in blank slates, but when we're looking at raising young boys, what we model for them, both everybody sitting on here, but mostly on the internet, where a lot of the new generation, the younger generation, even our generation here, have grown up on screen generations. The modeling of emotions is a deficit of the full range of things. You see on TV, on TikTok, on the internet, you'd see men being action stars, action heroes. You'd see men like the acting that men win awards for is aggressive. It's loud, it's bombastic, it's not subtle, you know. And the celebrations that you'd see on the pitch, you'd see on the cricket field, you know, is always like outwards, and you don't get a lot of quiet moments from men. And so when we're talking about policing emotions, the policing doesn't come from somebody standing over a child and say, don't act this way, act this way. It's what they see, and it's what people support and celebrate.
Yeah, what's been normalized.
Yeah, what is accepted and what is lauded. Not even just going beyond normalization, what we think is good and what we think is bad. And that doesn't need to be said every single day for a boy to get it. He gets it once and he would internalize it, hold it, and then from there he just carried it until it's reinforced again 2 months down the line. And because you're not getting anything else, it just continues to fill the pot, you know, just water pouring in. And by the time you're able to be exposed to other things, maybe for the first time you meet your girl cousin or your older male cousin who might have a better understanding of their emotions, it's too late. It's too late for it to be really impactful, you know, because it's fighting with all the other things that have been poured into that young child.
I find that interesting. When you mentioned the term policing, I ask myself, who at any point in my life do I remember saying, don't do this, don't do that explicitly? And I realized that nobody ever told me that. I was always, in similar way, encouraged, you know, it's okay to feel that, but the real policing would have been an unconscious and an unsaid and an even unspecified kind of policing. It's what do you think would be okay? But at the time when you experience those restrictions, you're a child. So what you think would not be okay, now you would actually understand it is okay, but nobody ever said it, and you're not going to ask about it. So what exactly is the standard? So you just don't do because you don't know what to do. So it's like an unconsciously said thing, but you get it because you know, all right, let me not say that, or let me not express too much, or let me not talk too much. So it's kind of you gauging, to me, honestly, the social setting that you're in, and how much can I show, how much can I gauge, you know, because I listen to a lot of it and I hear they are expressive, but the things that they are openly expressive about tend to be the more aggressive things, or the things that are understandable for you to be expressive about, so the things that make sense. You know, so it's interesting because it's unsaid, but it is not unfelt. So it's me
Yeah.
understanding social dynamics, but understand again every situation is different. So how can I ask myself now? How can I open up the conversation in a space to let people know that I don't have to say you could say anything, but you could feel that you could say anything.
Yeah.
So whatever that might look like for you, you could do it. Now, I might not do it, but I want you to feel that, and it's really that's really what it is for me. Trying to do that more, intentionally do that more. Because if not, you just default.
Yeah. I'll say a couple of things before I come back to the question. First thing, Savion is a griot. Yeah. In West Africa, that's the person who carries all these stories, so like a Nancy. Besides the troublemaking, but just the way that he speaks now. So continue speaking. If
Please,
nobody's ever told you that.
And you would believe the reason I said that is because there are so many times I have not spoken, and that's not because somebody said not to speak. That's because
you felt it.
that's because I silence myself, and
Yeah.
that's the worst thing you can do as a person. I realize, and that's like where I'm in my journey now, on silencing myself. But I appreciate that.
Please
but
continue speaking.
I just want you to voice that.
Say no more.
Say more.
Say more.
Say more. Don't call that, but yeah, no, that's crazy. My experience is different, and I think that's because I was real hard in growing up now.
I read it in your book.
Like, yeah, I guess I just never got it. I never got the signs, I never got the unspoken things, so I just continued being what was not normal and natural to me. And it got to a point where people felt the need to say, no, you're doing the wrong thing, or you should be doing this. So like Jarrell, I was very expressive at home because I was given that space to be expressive. But out in the world, there was a different story, right? So I could be happy, I could be sad at home, I could be angry, whatever, just be. I was just allowed to be, and that was great. But in the world, everybody's unaccustomed to it because most boys actually, before like the age of 5, they've already learned when I do X, it makes mommy and daddy sad.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make mommy and daddy sad, or my teacher sad, or upset, or mad, as you said, right? So they've already figured out, oh, I'm not supposed to do these things. And again, unspoken, right? But I just never got that. I just never did. Until people around me started complaining. I remember my PE teacher in primary school. He asked to speak to my dad because he couldn't figure out how to get me to be like a boy.
Well, he did
Right?
that.
Yeah.
Just, wanting to play games that boys played. My dad says all the time, so he tells the story of like taking me to play football, and all the other boys are, kicking the ball around and I'm picking grass. My interest was in football. For whatever reason, I like picking grass. And that was like one thing that like really bothered the people around because that's not how boys are. And then I have core memories of the people who allowed me to cry out in the world. De La Rosa, right? I would cry every day in class for whatever reason, and usually I cried when I was frustrated or angry, and other students would complain, gosh, Dion always crying, whatever, and she would say, no, crying is just the way that your body cleans out your eyes. That was her making space for me to cry, and I remember when I was leaving primary school going into secondary school, the guy who used to bully me, of all people in the class, he pulled me square and was like, I really had to stop this crying thing, because if you feel weird, treat you bad. He had older brothers, right? So he's like, if you feel weird, treat you bad. Them men in secondary school will, they will kill you. And I was like, what? Went in secondary school and I had to learn the lesson, it took me 4 years. But in Form 4, I was like, yeah, this emotions thing not working out for me. That was a conscious decision that I had to make in Form 4. As I said, most boys do that by the age of 5.
I guess.
Right?
Feels like that I feel like a lot of the things that you went through they just remind me of me, boy. Because in primary school it's the same thing. Like as we said, like we were given a space to express at home. So going into school, I fall down, got my knee, I balling on the place. Like I balling on the place, and everybody wanna know what wrong with you. Is a boy. Like
Supposed
it's
to
a
get up,
small
dust it off,
bruise,
and
dust it off, go on.
Run again.
And that's where like negative emotions used to like have a problem for me growing up in primary school, like standard 3 to like standard 5. It was hard for me because when I'm hearing these things, I know it's not wrong to cry because I learned that from home. So now I'm getting angry that you're telling me that I shouldn't cry.
Not just that, but it's
So-
what comes naturally to you as
Yeah.
well. Like this is just what my body's doing. I'm not like,
So-
hey, I want to cry as a result of
Exactly.
me falling down. Tears are just falling.
Exactly.
Like
So-
what am I do?
And I guess like one of the answers or the solutions very often lie in the questions, because Dion and I went to the same primary school, and again I used to cry in primary school all the time, and it didn't necessarily change when I went to secondary school. I think what happened to me personally in secondary school, and I'm really lucky for it, is I just had really good friends. Like, yeah, I would cry like, I would probably cry the most in class one time. But like, and like embarrassing things would happen to me in school. Mark could tell you a very embarrassing thing happened to me in form 1. Like, and the thing is like, it's these support systems, like, and a lot of the time, it's a support system, like for me, allowing a person to carry on, like, as usual, after a very heavily emotional thing happened, could sometimes be good, just like offering someone that kind of space to, breathe after the fact. And for me, like, they would have days where, again, I would cry down the place in school, and then I would go back to school and I'm with my brethrens, and like, one of them might ask if I want to talk about it. I could decide if I want to talk about it or not. And then if I say no, by this point, it's established, it's because I've probably spoken to someone about it. And I think that's the thing. It's like, we need to start offering spaces for people to properly investigate the navigation of their emotions and whether or not they are navigating them. Because I think, like, in Dion's case, where, like, by Form 4, he had to properly harden himself against something that was his inner child, against something that made Dion, that's happening to so many boys, and then it's happening to them at a younger age, and they're not having spaces to reorient themselves or reacquaint themselves with their emotions, and that's how we end up losing a lot of men. Is like, because a lot of men start off like very
feeling
emotional,
men.
and like I think again, like I think from like when you now pop out, everyone's emotional.
That's part of it. And
but,
emotion is just a response to whatever's occurring.
it's a response, and like
That's all it is.
And that's the thing. Is like, if things keep on making you feel like you want to just break down, and you're not. Like, that's how come, like, whenever someone tells someone you're so resilient for XYZ, I'm like, yes, but it shouldn't be that they have to be resilient to go through all of these things. And I think, like, that's the thing with men, is like, from a very young age, if you keep on hardening yourself and keep on hardening yourself, by the time you're 12 or 13 even, like, you already that's when you start to work against spaces that might actually be available for men to express their emotions. Like, there might be a group of friends in school, are very expressive and open about these things, and then that friend group starts to get attacked.
They're
or bullied,
chastised.
and then they're chastised. And that's the
expressive.
thing, is like, it continues to work against itself, and it's very much a thing whereby, like, spaces need to be afforded and protected almost. And I think, like, protection is a big thing that, like, we need to start speaking about with men, in terms of, like, men, and it starts with ourselves. Like, we need to protect ourselves first, and we could only help ourselves first, and then that's when we could start to help other people when it comes to managing emotions.
I want to say one more thing. Save and I forgot I wanted to mention this. Something that I've found helps when wanting to communicate that this is a safe space without saying this is a safe space, or you could talk or whatever, is reiterating and reassuring the person by simply repeating yourself. Yeah, so how you feeling today? Why good or no? And you realize they're not really good.
Mm-hmm.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
Like that, just that alone.
Yeah.
No, really, how you
shows the
feeling?
interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's become part of just how we greet people.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
necessarily that we actually trying to find out how this person is feeling.
Like an expected coaching.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. But
From
like
honest.
when you let this person know, no, I'm genuinely asking you this question,
Mm.
they understand and they receive.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm allowed or I'm given the opportunity now to say what's on my mind.
Mm.
Even if it's still in passing because they pass each other on Frederick Shoe.
You know, but you still have
You know,
opportunity.
you
And
could
I think
reach
just,
out later on.
Just knowing that
Just,
I
yeah.
could have said something,
Mhm.
that makes a difference.
That's a start.
Yeah, it makes a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
So how do you think we can start like break? Because I kind of touched on it, having the safe space, protecting your safe space within yourself and other people. But how do we start breaking down these teachings of what it means to be a real man? I think it's either Mark or Jesse said it, and it made me think of this term. It's called homosociality, I think, where groups of people uphold definitions of a certain group. So like men will uphold manhood and what it means to be a man. Women will uphold womanhood and what it means to be a woman. And then it comes to like norms that group has to subscribe to. So a man must be a protector, provider, strong. He must not show his emotions, and that's upheld within manhood
Yeah.
and with men. And then with women, well, you have to be soft, you have to be softer life, you have to be the certain things that's
Yeah.
upheld within women. So like, how do we start to break down that within our own classifications or just within society? How we start to
Yeah.
break down that those scripts that
Yeah.
we have to.
We have to accept that we can't do it.
Mhm.
But I'm not saying that and like, you know, this is how it is, this is how it will always be. That's not what I'm saying at all. I cannot go out there and stand up on a soapbox and be like, being a man is not what you think it is, you can be different, and expect people to listen to me. All we've been saying so far, most of what we've been saying so far is that people learn by example, or through example, or through seeing. They will. You have to be that man. You have to be that woman. You have to be the example so that other people see, oh, I can do that too. And then they start, and they might even start by asking a question. How it is, you're a fella, but you okay with crying in public and thing though?
Ways do that because you sort of disrupt. You have to disrupt
Correct.
the connections, the existing connections, and then redefine and re-educate. You know what I mean? Because when you were talking just now, you were talking about emotions and hardening yourself. The first thing that came to my mind was when you cut off your emotional side and you kind of affect that inner child, you affect the whole child. It's kind of come like, let's say, emotions are your arm. You cut off the arm, you're bound to have repercussions throughout the other body. So how much more do you lose by losing your arm? And I was thinking that for men, I wonder if that's why when men become heartless, they become less playful, they become less curious about things in life, and that because of how the whole world is then hardened. So now you have to disrupt that connection and redefine it. So it's like we could have fun and we could play, but we about business at the same time. We could protect and we could provide, but at the same time we need to be provided for. So it's showing that the two could exist in the same space, and that's only done through example. Because you can't say one thing and then show something else. Because many times, and even I talked to my wife about it as well, is that because of how much men do, and because of how much I do, you get accustomed to the amount that I do. But I would never say I do enough because I had a handle what I had to handle, and it's fine. But don't think that when I'm not doing it, it's because I'm lazy, or it's because of I just being a loss. It's because the two could exist at the same time. I could still be that person and provider. I could still be the energetic one who does, and I could still be the one that relaxes. So it's for not only for you to present that difference, but then for somebody to understand the duality could exist, which would take time. But.
And I think also, like, going back to that point of laziness, I think now, like, when you're young, right? Like, no, it starts early, in my opinion. Like, when people, like, if someone expresses a want to not do something, it's like you need to, like in the house or like with friends or something, sometimes it's never investigated. And like it starts early. It starts with like if you say, oh, you know, I'm not really feeling to do that today. Oh, okay, cool. That's an opportunity to provide a space for someone to say why. And like I've been told I'm really annoying for it. I hope I don't change. But a lot of the time I ask people why all the time. I'm like, oh, why? Because and that was the space I was afforded as a child. It's like very often my parents say, why do you feel like this? And for me, that combined with a lot of quiet time helped me to just essentially it gave me the footing to learn how to navigate my emotions from an early age. And I know a lot of people don't have that. And I think like it could start with grown men. Like I've asked my dad numerous times, like, Dad, why did you do that? Okay, why do you feel like this? And then we might have a conversation about something that neither of us thought the day would have started off like. And I think why is a very important question to ask men when they are when they seem very closed off. Like obviously don't poke and prod too much, but like if they express a want or a kind of laziness or lethargy, like there's probably something going on there that we are trying to hide from expressing. And I think someone said it, but people will talk if given the space to talk. It was like it, you need to encourage them and keep on asking and say, like, you know, like ask
without pestering.
Without pest, and that's a very hard
It's
line.
a very
thin line. But I think it's become a thin line because of how we express anger and because of how we like respond almost to being questioned, or like because like, oh, why are you questioning how I
wrong?
Yeah, it's like, why are you making me feel wrong for, you know, how I'm feeling about something? And it's not like we're trying to make you feel wrong, we're trying to make you feel.
But that again speaks to the understanding and how we define those questions, because the questions, and let's think about a typical child example. You know, a child does something as deemed as wrong, the child is asked why, the child is then punished for what they did. But the parents who might see the child as having done that thing as naughty, they didn't ask why they did it, and they didn't ask and understand. They came from a place of curiosity. They came from a place of, I was feeling this thing and I explored this feeling, and that's what led to it. So now when mommy asks me why, I know it's coming with aggression, it's coming with disappointment, it's coming with frustration. So whenever somebody in the future asks me why, that's how I expect it. And that's how it's received, because it's why you do that? Why you shouldn't have done that? And it goes into this negative expectation, and it's received as confrontation.
I think we've definitely made the line thin.
Yeah.
It's not like the line has always been thin. I think it's because very often you're being asked why, because it's about to be preceded with punishment. It's like, oh gosh, why you do that
why? Because
for?
there's a problem.
They're not even asking.
It's like why have you made me angry? Not what has led you to do this. And I think like that's the thing. It's like we need to start thinking it with like
a big difference.
What has led you to this?
But I think even in that difference, that could be a way in which we frame the question. So what were you thinking when you did this, or what were your motives when you did this?
Step by step.
You know, instead of the why question mark, because why could be so much. It could lead to so much. You know?
Let me say your son mash up a tabletop, but all he was trying to do was clean up the space for mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
You know. And then he never wanted to clean again in his life because of that.
Correct.
That happens with a lot of children on shows.
For real.
That happens with a lot of children on shows, because if you ask your child to do something and then they feel like they have to do it to stop you from being upset rather than to partake in a household and be a part of a community, they start to have this negative association with things. And I think all of that is the work that we now need to do. We now need to like reframe and rephrase things and afford people the space to answer why, but also allow them to feel why. Because I think a lot of people aren't being afforded that kind of space to feel that.
I also feel though that a lot of the times when kids don't want to do chores, it may not always be as simple as, you know, they just don't want to do it, or even they don't want to do it because of a punishment. It could be something even more psychological, or
100%.
like for instance, I have ADHD. As a child, there are many chores I didn't want to do, but there are also many chores I love to do. Like as a child, I love to wash wares because I get to play in water. You know what I mean? But don't ask me to wash the wares. Let me do it. Let me do it. Because that's how ADHD works. If I don't have the motivation to do it, I'm not going
It's
to.
not gonna get done.
It's not gonna get done. That's just how ADHD is. So there are kids that are like that. Like especially boy children. ADHD is actually more prevalent in boys and girls. So especially the ADHD version. The ADD version is more in girls, but ADHD is like very high in guys. Very high. So a lot of the time it could be that maybe they have something even more underlying that that no one's looking into.
Yeah.
There was a teacher that I had in primary school that thought that okay, this child is smart. It's not that he's not applying himself as people think that he's not applying himself. It's not that he's too talkative. It's not that he's disruptive or wants to do his own thing. Something deeper is going on with this child. That teacher is the one that told my mother, go and get him tested. And that's how I found out that ADHD. Before that, every report card I get, he doesn't apply himself, he's too talkative, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. It's not that I don't want to do it. I love school. Like school was fun for me because I get to come to school, see my friends. I didn't mind doing the work. Just you have to make it interesting for me. That's all. Like don't do it as boring. I would not pay attention. That's all it was. After that, I did pretty good. I got to go to GRC. So like clearly something good came out of it.
On a biological level though, I feel they need to add this. Men resting is actually extremely important. And I'd say more important than women resting, but let me say why. It's because the chemical that's used, or the hormone rather, that's used to exert energy is testosterone. And men need a lot more of it in their body to be able to do things. Women, it's like having a small cup for testosterone in women, but men have this large cup. So it takes longer to fill it up and then to be able to use it. That's why when men do things that are often victimized in modern day society, like playing video games or just lying down and scrolling aimlessly, like these are actually things that scientists have realized that's when testosterone is building in the male body, so that when they do get up, they can't go and do the 1,000,001 things that they're expected to do. You know?
That is interesting.
Yeah. Like you'll need so much less as women that it's just like you could sit down for 20 minutes and like you're ready to go again now. But like we physically aren't built that way. Yeah.
Like 5 minutes and ready to function.
Because very transparent with us. I have two brothers. One who I spend most of the time in the Bronx, and he's a video game addict. When I tell you this boy can play video games, like he's getting paid to play video games. So I remember there was a time I was like, why are you not playing with your child? Like you are not like, you're not doing what you need to do. You're always on this game. So then, as you're saying this, one of the things like is popping up in my head too, is for me, at least in that moment, because I didn't know rest can look like that. You know, but we're taught like if you're playing video games, you're wasting time.
Yeah.
You know, you're not doing
it's
things.
just mindless activity.
Exactly, yeah. But I wonder how many times, or I don't even know how to word this question, or how do I say this? How many times men use video games to rest, but because of what we're taught video games are and what it produces, like that mindless, I don't know how to say mindless, the activities, I guess, how does that like prohibit them from actually resting? Because, you know, I don't feel like men are given that space to rest. I feel like y'all are always on the go. Yeah, like always have to be productive, always have to show your productivity, always have to be like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
Because that's how
Yeah.
It touch a lot of all with the work, water, like, and I think to touch on it, there's a flip side there, because I think if you look at a lot of like men's like obsessions with these things, it could be attached, like, because again, like I've played loads of video games in my time too, and I can tell you for sure, like when I am either resting or I think I'm going to be extremely sad about something, first thing I start to do is play video games way more. And that's just because, like, again, it starts to rest me, it starts to pump dopamine into my system. And I think it's important to be aware of these things and these things that you have relationships with.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing is, if we are aware of, like, so for me it's video games, for some people it could be the gym and all these different things. But I think, like, it is something to navigate, because if we don't notice, like, the things that we put into ourselves, again, since we are men and we're placed in this world in a position where if we exert a certain kind of violence or power, like, or if something is wrong with us, it's much more felt by other people than if we weren't a man. At least that's my belief. So I think, like, we need to be careful with these things and how we interact with them, especially obsessions, because it can also mean that there's something, like, the same thing with the child, and like, why they're playing that so much, like, why are you on that so much, like, you know, like, it could be that they're resting, it could be that they're trying to get away from something, it could be that that's their attachments to how they receive dopamine, which is a whole other thing. And I think, like, it's important, again, going back to the why, it's important to ask, why is this happening right now? Because on one hand, you can use it really well. Like, when I was really, like, I was diagnosed depressed for like a while, and I found myself running every single morning because I knew in the morning that's pumping something into my system that can help me fight that, because again, like, I need to keep on going. Like, this thing, we can't just let this thing defeat me, so I need to keep on going. But I knew that that's what was helping me. But I think, like, if we don't know how these things can help us, we can't use the tools to help ourselves. And what is a tool to one person can be a weapon to another. And I think, like, that's how we need to be careful, especially as men, about, like, all of our obsessions.
Not just like a weapon for another, but can be a weapon to yourself as
Yeah,
well.
that's what I mean, yeah.
So there comes a point where you're lying down for so long that it's not rest anymore, and you're just being lazy. Absolutely. And that's where accountability comes
But
in.
not even laziness, just like you're just not feeling okay.
It switches from being purposeful or helpful to then becoming harmful.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the I guess I observe with things that bring pleasure. Everybody is chasing pleasure, everybody is chasing passion and these good emotions, these good feelings which have a need, and we must experience those things. But because of how much we want to experience those things, we tend to overdo. And then, as you were saying, anything you overdo, anything done in excess is never good. But you would have started off needing it, but you would have come to a point where you kind of would have filled up, you know, your gas tank is full and you could then go, but then you're doing it so long, it begins to mean so much more for you. Then discipline has to come in, and that's a whole other ball game in itself, you know. So how do we be disciplined enough to know this is what I turned on the game for? I got what I needed to get out of the game. Now it's time to move again, you know. But that's a whole next thing in itself.
I mean, that was the quality question, though, right? Like, how do we, what do we need to do to teach men specifically, how to deal with their emotions, and then what's happened, touched on how to deal with your mental health, to check in with yourself, to be able to then really identify this is the time when I don't need to play the video game anymore. And I mean, this has been said by everybody here. You have to interrogate, maybe not everything, but like everything. Interrogate like as much as you can. Why are you making that choice with your son, with your nephew, with your cousin, with your neighbor? Why are you making that choice for yourself? What script are you using to talk to a boy? And what script are you using to talk to a girl and talk that way? What script do you need to say to this person that's before you, this tiny person with this person, you know? So yeah, I think like that, to sum up like a lot of what these guys have been saying here, we need to really interrogate the choices that we're making, and that's hard. People are work, people are family, people are things going on. That is hard. I'm not trying to say that we just not doing the easy thing to do. I'm saying though that whenever you can, take a minute, interrogate the choice that you are forcing a lot of time on children, because they don't have agency, or rather they do have agency, they're born with it like everybody else is, but we don't allow them to have the agency. You know, so if you're taking that away from somebody, then you have a lot of responsibility to them to make sure that you're addressing their needs specifically at all times. Unless, and if you want to do that, give them a little bit more rope, let them become a person a little bit earlier and maybe you're comfortable. Yeah.
And I guess it comes to like having spaces where interrogation is available.
Exactly.
Like
built in.
Yeah, like for me, it would just be like, like sometimes like I'm big on journaling. Everybody does it, but like sometimes I would journal. And like I'm talking about like in primary school we used to have to journal. And then if you combine that with people asking me why I felt the way that I felt about things, which I'm so grateful for.
You're right.
Bishop's Junior,
Right.
in like prep one.
Yeah.
That was I don't want to recount too much
Bro,
shit. But like, and then so for me, like my interrogation space is my journal, but then that space is now also my parents, because my parents ask me why, and then from having those two spaces, now it's my friends. My friends can encourage me on why, and then it's my partner. My partner would be like, "Oh, why do you feel like this?" And I feel like it because of the work that's been done against us by ourselves, by the world around us. We now need to be intentional in these spaces that we are fostering to make sure that we can interrogate ourselves and people can intentionally interrogate us to an extent, and in a way that we know is generous, and in a way that we know is looking for the best thing. And I think that's the thing. It's about now intentionally being very intentional with the way that we do things, knowing how things have worked against us for a long time.
And one of the things that you said, I haven't read this book as yet, but you've been kind of touching on this book by Oprah Winfrey called What Happened to You. And exactly what you're saying is exactly how she described the book. A lot of times when we ask questions based off like trauma, we always want to ask you why. Why does this happen? Why? But we never ask what happened to you that made you behave that way. So I mean, that's definitely a book. It's on my list. I mean, not up there. I haven't read it yet, but put it up there. But you were talking about, kind of touched on it a little bit. Mental health of men. One question I really did want to ask is, do you feel the mental health movement creates space for men? Like, do you feel that it is geared towards you and makes you feel seen?
Yeah. I would say that it's a tricky question, right? Because I think some good context to start off with is the mental health movement exists on the internet.
Real.
Who uses and who speaks on the internet? I would say more often than not, it's women, right? And I think they pioneered the mental health movement as we know it today. And so I get why some men would say the mental health movement is not for us, because you see women talking about it, you see women talking about their specific struggles, and that may not feel inclusive to you because it's not somebody who looks like you, it's not struggles that you have. But I have seen countless times women opening up spaces for mental health, for men specifically, for them to talk about it. And it's never, I shouldn't say never, a lot of the time it's not altruistic. It's very self-interested for women, because a lot of the things that impact women's mental health are the actions of men, right? So, and it's men's mental health. So I think I do feel seen by it, because women have made a conscious effort to include men, and I would love to see more men now carve out a space, not take women's platform, but carve out a space for us to talk, because out of the truth, by truth I mean like personal truths that we just say, may be difficult to hear, and needs to be in a space that's safe for men to express it, reason with it, address it, and not just let it flourish, because all the things might be toxic, all the things might be negative, all the things might be harmful and deeply problematic. But I do think that, to really go back to the question, I do feel seen by it, because mental health, for certain things and at certain points, don't have a gender.
Exactly.
it crosses the gender, and now there are specific things that men need to deal with, and specific spaces that need to be for us, like this space. And this space is hosted by a woman, somebody who identifies as a woman, right? So I feel yeah. So like, I mean, I don't want to speak for the other men on here. I don't want to speak for the men who might be listening to this and what you may feel. But maybe take a second to really think about, you know, how we got here. And I say how because you need to identify who spoke up first, who said this first, who, and by first not because you're the first person, that means you get all the pips, but you're the pioneer, and then other people, you open the door for people to walk behind you. So, you know, I feel seen because the creators of the space very much want me and people who look like me in it, you know. Yeah, so that's why I personally feel like it caters to us, so I personally feel that it speaks to us, and we just have to listen and respond.
And I think, again, I agree with everything Mark said. I think one thing that, like, a lot of men, because this also exists on the internet, the first thing a lot of men say, like, about the mental health movement or anything that is championed by women is like, oh yeah, but them women love to say that they hate men, etc., etc. And I think, like, okay, like, I understand. But like one, like, again, they're creative. Yes, they're looking for their best interest because if they are
That's human
pioneering
nature.
this movement, yeah, it is.
Forget that. Like, forget all the academic stuff. It's human nature. You check for yourself first.
And like they're looking out for themselves because a lot of the things that harm them and a lot of the actions that we do that may harm them stem from a lack of actual upcaring of men's mental health. And I think like that's, again, say what Mark said, like that's why it's really important because like it also then teaches us, like, which is something I think, like, yeah, we listen to our moms, sometimes listen to our sisters, but like going out into the world again, it's very easy to navigate the world and be a man and not actually listen to what a woman says. And I think like by entering that space and doing that, you are already starting to undo a lot of the work that has been done to you as a man in terms of learning about what it actually might mean to be a man and like all the behaviors that you have learned and how they are harmful. Like that's a massive step towards unlearning, is sitting down and saying, okay, I actually need to listen. And I think like I think once we learn how to do that, we can then learn how to listen to each other. And I think because like one thing I took from secondary school, I remember a lot of arguments we had, and it was always the loudest one that was perceived as the most right. Like, and it's because we never used to listen to each other. And I think listening is a big thing that we need to learn how to do, how to listen, digest what someone is saying, and then also open up truth. Because when someone feels listened to, that's when they'll feel way more encouraged to share their truth. And I think that's what we can really take from the movement and be a part of it for.
Boy, that was some great right now, very thought provoking because I recently did a campaign with Sun Mix, and because of what they asked of me, I participated in Men's Mental Health Month, right? And it's only in doing these things I was like, you know, I would not have taken the initiative by myself to do these things. So they gave me a water bottle. So because I was drinking more water, I asked myself, I wouldn't have done that just like that. So it kind of had to start externally, but once I got it here, I was like, oh, I need to do this more. I understand the importance of doing this more. So that's why I'm extremely grateful for the pioneers of the movement. And I have seen many men in general, in every position, take on a leadership role and show the importance of speaking on these things and have added to the men's mental health movement. So I personally can't say I've seen it being pushed by women. Obviously I have, but I can't say more than men in this situation. But I think it's important to have allies, understand, to have people that will think of these things, because I realize one of the greatest gifts that God gave man, if not the greatest gift, was women, because of how differently they think about things, how differently they see the world. They might see a need that a man might not see, But once the need is filled, the man can see so much more. So it's important to have those allies, but then once you realize this is for us, this is what we need to have, we need to take it on and then take it further from there. You know, so it's like even regardless of where it started, will it be continued with me? That's the question then I have to ask, and how will I change this space and how will I add my touch to the movement there? You know? So that's my thoughts on it there.
I'm coming in a bit of a controversial angle here. First off, the internet is, as you said, where the mental health movement is being championed, right? But we also have to accept that the internet is not a safe space, right? Because there are no bounds within the internet, and like everything that is the internet is the internet. You say something on Twitter, it's on Instagram in seconds. If it's the kind of content that translates or goes across, which is essentially anything that causes back and forth.
Correct.
Anything that is going to make noise, right? Most men, Jesse and I were talking about this before we reached, don't have the academic jargon or the right words to use to talk about whatever it is they're trying to express. Simply because that kind of communication isn't encouraged amongst or between men. So as a result, I believe that men are extremely disadvantaged online, which is where the mental health space exists. And when they do try to speak, oftentimes they're met with, you're saying the wrong words, as opposed to, we hear what you say.
I'm trying to hear you.
Yeah,
we see it might be
because sometimes what you're saying has value, you know. You just don't know how to say it properly. You're just using the tools that you have in your arsenal to get the point of the message across. But the other people are only seeing a weapon. Whoever's on the receiving end, because it could be other men, it could be women, it could be whoever. Person who's receiving it is like, no, those words have been used negatively against me or against people that I love. So as a result, you are an enemy because you are using these words. Many men have been chased off of social media. Chased, I use an inverted commas because it can't be chased off per se, but you feel like
and then you are
I don't belong here and I'm unwelcome.
unwelcome.
I've had, I'm saying many men, but I'm one of those men. I've had conversations online where I'm simply trying to have an honest conversation so that we can have an understanding, before an agreement, an understanding of where each other is coming from. And I've been met with harsh words. And I know when I said the things I said, my intent was not to hurt anybody, and I understand the impact of the intent. But your intent was to hurt me. And we're not talking about that. All because the word I used, which was all I had, was a word that hurt you, and I get that. And I accept that. I have no other word right now, though. In some instances, I've been asking of people who've been in the academic space, who've been in the groundwork space, the grassroots space, so they understand the terms and terminologies. I've been asking of them, hey, this is what I want to express. How do I say that? How you gonna say that? And then when you see them in public, they ain't see you yet. They just seeing what you said. You know, and I find it very difficult, and I'm speaking on a personal level now. I don't want to speak for anybody else. I find it very difficult to talk about my problems or the things that concern me when all I'm met with is aggravation, you know? And this is not the first space that I've been a part of where a woman said, men need a space to talk about their emotions. Men need a space to talk about what's going on with them. And they need to be received, you know? But it's just the second. and I can't count how many times I haven't been received well when my intentions were good. And yeah, I did not know, but how do you expect me to know if I don't know? And I'm actually one who's seeking to find out, to understand, to know better, to be able to do better. And you pushing me back? I could understand if I was bad.
Yeah.
I could understand if I had no respect for what the work you're trying to do and doing. I could understand if I was that person. But I've never been that person. And many times, too often, I've been met with pushback. And again, just in happy terms. You know, but being a man, they'll still tell you, it's up to you to do the work. So I went in an academic space and I learned the language. But now I have a serious fear that I might slip up still and get met with that again. Go right back into the same cycle. Because we're not given room to make mistakes either. You know, we see it countless times. Somebody tweets something when Twitter had first launched. And then all of a sudden they lost their work.
Yep.
You know? Just because they were an ignorant teenager, like all of us were. You know, so it definitely does exist. Men are being led to the mental health space, but I feel as though the men that remain in those conversations are like very few who have been accepted by those who are championing the space.
And there are many times I've seen, especially going off of like the internet conversation, I've seen, you know, men actively seek out that information. They may be ignorant and say the wrong thing, but they obviously, you can tell that they're seeking that information and they want you to correct them. Instead, you're like pushing them away as opposed to allowing them to learn from what they don't know. Because as you said, you can't know if you don't know. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So it's just about giving them that space to learn
I guess
instead of pushing them away.
I guess that's where the movement is then transferred or moved into life. One of the things that saved me so many times from countless arguments was just people in general. Is saying I don't have the words right now. Like, if something's overwhelmed me, or if I'm upset and someone asks me a question about that, saying I don't have the words right now has saved me so many times. And I think not having the words sometimes on the internet, that's where you bounce in trouble. Like when you don't have the words and you don't have the tools. And I feel like what the mental health movement on the internet has taught me, it's when I don't have the tools, and again, because I'd say kind of maybe fair, I would go and, you know, ask people, and like not everyone has access to the people I may have access to. I would go and, you know, ask people like, you know, from a genuine place, because you know me, what does this mean? What about this? What about this? But I feel like that is something, and I feel like the people who lash out on the internet, one might be, you know, doing it out of malintent, two might be doing it to get engagement on the internet, or three, sometimes some people are just tired of explaining things.
Absolutely.
And I think like that's the thing on the internet, is that you don't, like, it's so hard to read intent. It's so, and I think that's where the movement then needs to shift from online to in person. Like it's gotten a conversation going there. That conversation then needs to happen where we have safe spaces where people can read intent, where people can come in and have intent. Because on the internet, like, it's a very, very hard place to read intent unless like you have literally a locked space where it's just you and your friends and you say blah 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 blah.
But bro, like, that's still not safe, right? Because the conversation starts on a timeline, and you realize like whoever's not reading your thing the way that you meant to put it out, right? So you go in the DMs, then all of a sudden the screenshots
Screenshots.
Yeah.
end up on the timeline, and it's like,
Mhm.
yo, I'm just trying to understand you.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to have you understand where I'm coming from, you know. But is many times I've seen that it's not about including men in the mental health space, and it's about the optics that come with being somebody that's presenting themselves as someone that's championing that space. If I didn't respect you, Hanifa, I wouldn't have come here. But I know that you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart. There are other people, if they had asked me to come to their thing to talk, I'd say no. Because I know that they're not doing it because they actually want to include men in this discussion. They're doing it because they know it looks good.
Like it's trendy right now.
Correct.
Yeah, but regardless of that, doesn't that still give a platform that you can maybe take advantage of to try
Get
to?
somebody.
So yeah, so you know, it's a good thing regardless that the conversation is happening, right? But me personally and my close friends will know this. I'm not trying to have that conversation online because I know that there are people out there who will not just misinterpret but
Purposely
vilify it
Mm.
as though I'm doing something wrong, you know, or I'm doing something that my intent is to bring harm to people. No, this has nothing to do with you. This has to do with me seeing pain amongst the people around me and them not having a space to talk about it and to work through it.
I guess it's hard
So
to
I don't do it online. I just when I sit down with my dogs, yo, what's going on? Tell me how you feeling. You know, how are you? Let's talk about it. What's happening in your life right now? Do you need anything from me? Online never gonna see that from me. You know, I could call somebody.
So Leon, let me always take you back. Let me pose this as a solution, right? Where I think in this transitory space that we're finding men's mental health, because mental health as a movement relatively young, right? And now we included men in it because we see it and the need for that large, right? I think for me, what I found as helpful is being a shipper, like a translator between the chronically online, which I consider myself one of, and like the people who don't have that knowledge. And we've been speaking about people who put their foot in their mouth when they're online, trying to express their emotions. I think as men, you know, as much as I have my own feelings about this phrase, we need to be our brother's keeper in order to guide them and arm them with the words necessary, not so much so that they could win the struggle Olympics or the oppression Olympics, as some
Just
people
so that the
call it.
conversation can
So
occur.
the conversation can occur because I think as men we are very bold to step into the space that women created for themselves and try to say, well, I need to talk like this because this is what I know how to talk like, instead of saying, well, I'm entering a space. This is not our space. They are inviting us and they're making us a corner and a lane for us, but it's not ours. They created this type of language to understand their emotions and their experiences, and it is useful for us in certain contexts, and perhaps we now can be the linguistics innovators in our spaces, you know. So I think we need to take the social media buzzwords that people like to use derogatorily, and translate it to our brethren who may be not online as much and may need the assistance to communicate with women online, or even within or with other men who are also part of that mental health circle right now. You know, I think this is where we can eliminate the problem of, well, I said this with good intention and you responded because you have, it sounded like something that somebody said before that hurt you, or was or like a buzzword that people who are not empathetic say to you. So now you respond aggressively with bad intentions to hurt me. Eliminate that whole interaction by having a third party in there trying to like translate and arming you with the knowledge that you need in order to have that conversation. Or just don't step in his space, like I said, Leon, have it offline, you know, but have it offline with the people knowledgeable of the wisdom that's been dropped online about mental health, so that when the conversation is happening offline, it's not a circle. It's not we're not going anywhere. It's just, you know what, yeah, right, you know. We okay, we doing okay. We don't really need to move too far ahead with mental health. We are right now. We need people to come in and disrupt us. And whether we go into their space to get the disruption, or we have the translators come in and bring the disruption to us, we need the disruption to shake it up and move forward mental health.
I believe that you're right, first and foremost, and I believe that work is happening. I can say so confidently because I'm doing it.
Yeah,
Many times I've been the mediator between my brethren and a girl, or you know, just two people trying to have a conversation but speaking two completely different languages, and I'm like, oh no, I get what you're saying, but I also get what you're saying. This is what they're trying to say, this is what they're trying to say, and they're like, oh, will peace. Many times. Many times, right? But like, again, I don't think that happens online. It can happen online, of course, because it's just another medium of communication, but it's so much more difficult online. So I just try to have them offline, which means that it's not gonna get publicity. You're not gonna know that it's happening because it's not about recognition. It's about ending conflict or bringing this conflict to a point where it's complete. And these people can, you know, resolve and say, okay, well, I was wrong for this reason, I was right for this reason, or whatever. But the problem with the internet, or one of the problems with it, is that being wrong is definite. Once you are wrong about one thing on the internet one time, people will always remember that and treat you as such. You can never be right about something again. Once you fall short once you're not perfect once, that's held against you forever now. And there's nobody that exists on the internet who has always been perfect. So as a result, there's always gonna be that pushback, and that's why I say it does not belong on the internet, because what you can do in person that you can't do on the internet is sit in a role and have that role be respected. I'm not here today as the person who said the controversial thing on May 25th, whatever date, you know? I'm here as the person facilitating this conversation or sharing my thoughts and feelings about something, you know?
But isn't that just a benefit of a lack of accountability in the person right now? Because if I had a folder full of things that I know you said because I recorded it, and like it's the same effect.
Yeah.
It's just that it's easy on the internet. I think
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that ease of access to mistakes is the problem. Because I could just go check in the archives or go to your account and search a word.
No, but the point I'm trying to get across is that we would still do that if we could in person.
But we can't. When I say can't, it's so much more difficult that what's the point of doing it? You rather have the conversation, which is the important thing that's occurring.
But I guess like there's also a reason as to why there's probably been way more progress in the women's mental health movement than the men's side of it. And not only that, but especially to this point, there is a space online that was made by them. And Mark brought up the point, we are entering the space unprepared without the tools to enter the space. So of course we're going to say things that, you know, again, like if women craft out a space for themselves to have these conversations, and we go in unaware of the hurt that we've perpetuated and continue to perpetuate that hurt, they may react in a way, and that's also a sign that we haven't carved out an actual space for ourselves yet. Because I've seen, like, I can tell you for sure, like, it's definitely like a lot of men who go into these spaces say bad things, and then all of a sudden they can't say anything again, right? But I've seen women be wrong and then like come back and that kind of stuff, and I think that's because like of the space that they have curated for themselves. There's an understanding that the languages that they have, they can, you know, be wrong and come back and that kind of stuff. But we're now entering this space to receive, and we're trying to give, but I think we're giving in the wrong place or asking in the wrong place. It's like we now need to, you know, shift it towards creating a space for ourselves. And I think the movement was started online, yes, but I think the movement now needs to.
I think so.
Yeah.
But
You
I
see? But I didn't lead them astray.
Yes,
Did I lead them astray?
Yeah, I think so.
If that's the case, then she's definitely on the side.
Well,
Okay.
you figure it out.
No. This is a scene.
He's coming back.
Saying that you astray.
Is that it?
Okay. She don't I led you astray. I led you astray. Oh gosh.
Oh, good.
I am so sorry.
What I will say to that, Jesse,
I
because
just can't finish.
go ahead.
But I think now the movement needs to find legs in person. I'm and I've read up on this. I'm a big believer in that any movement that starts and stays online can't properly affect the change necessitated in local areas, whether and that's any kind of movement, because different areas have different genders, the way genders are perceived, the way genders enact, the ways in which people of different classes enact. There's a whole slew of things as to reasons why one movement which is globalized, with global rules, can't properly enact communal and localized change, and that's because the movement then needs to find legs on the ground.
it needs to be specific to that space.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing with men's spaces in particular in hair, because I think one, the movement online hasn't even properly found its legs yet, and I think that's to tell you how early we are in this thing. I think it hasn't properly found its legs yet online, and what all we can do now is use our legs on the ground now to provide spaces, and if we're lucky enough to find someone who, I shouldn't say the word lucky, if we find someone who can again be that translator for us, ask as many questions as we can, learn as fast as we can, and once we learn as much as we can, help other people learn. And I feel like that's all that we can do given the place that we are at right now.
Remember earlier when we were talking about letting go of privilege?
Yeah.
And the privileges that you have? Many people are in fear of that.
Yeah.
And many of those people obviously are men, as we live in a patriarchal society, right? And they don't know what can occur when they say I'm wrong, or I've been wrong, or I realize now that I'm wrong, because that's giving power to somebody else, and being in fear of that will that exists past the point of admitting that you've been wrong or your ideology on something has been false or whatever is not easy, and many times we downplay how difficult that is for an individual, because we are given this understanding of how life works very early on, and we live with it for a very long time before it's initially challenged, or at least we have been. That's if ever, many times when I'm having these sorts of conversations with my father, we get to a point where he says, it's a good thing this is your will, yes? Like he doesn't have 20, 30 years more living here. He's just like, I don't have to, because he doesn't have much more time, whatever, right? But that's just how he's putting it across, because he simply is not interested in doing the work and what happens as a result of that. And he's 60, but there are 30-year-old men who feel the same way, 25-year-old men who feel the same way, 20-year-old men who feel the same, 15-year-old boys who feel the same way. It's like, what am I even doing that for now? And I think what we have to do first, before anything else, is show men and boys how this thing negatively affects them. Because we have to accept that as human beings, before we come to societies and these structures that we build, we have to accept first that we are selfish beings. I can only feel what I feel. The only reason that empathy exists is because I know how I feel when I look the way that you do right now. Because I see that you have a gash on your arm, do I know that you're in pain? Because when I had a gash on my arm, I felt pain. that's how empathy comes with. It's all coming back to me and what I can feel and what I can understand. If I had just a hard lash now, I'm not feeling that lash. He's the only person feeling it. My hand might sting a little bit. My hand might sting a little bit, but that's that's because I enacted pain on somebody else, right? You have to make this person the center of the conversation if you are trying to bring them into it. And I think that's something that's extremely difficult for the people who exist in this space to accept, because many times men are the perpetrators of these large problems that we see on a global scale. So why would I want to empathize with a man? That's the question, right? And it's a difficult question to answer, because most times it's a man who did something bad to you when you were growing up. To your mother when you were seeing your father beating your mother growing up. These things are realities now. And we ignore that there are difficult things that even we ourselves need to step past in order to make the things occur. This work that we're trying to do is not easy. That's something that we have to, it's not easy, therefore there's no easy solution. This is hard work. And it's hard work that we have to do every day, every hour, every minute. We have to live in that truth and that reality. We have to accept that sometimes people are gonna piss me off simply because they don't know. Not even because they're trying to piss me off or trying to gaslight me. They are doing the work that I did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm a student and I'm doing my minor in gender studies, and I was met by a lecturer who is facing students who are now starting their gender journey with so much agitation. And I get it. You've been in this thing 30 years, you should be pissed that you still have to do this. It is frustrating, but that's the nature of the work. You need to meet these people where they are, and that's the only way that you can teach somebody. It's the only way. You cannot say, you had to come to me. I'm not gonna teach you until you reach here. No, how I reach in there in the first place? And I would accept that if you say, here are the resources. I would accept that if that was the way we were doing this. Here are the resources. Read this. Let's have a conversation. But I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. We need to accept. The work is hard work. It's if this is the world that we want, we're gonna have to have hard conversations that make us feel like I want to lash him. Right now I want to choke him to death. We need to accept that we will feel that way, but we can't do that, because that's not the way that we're going to get him to understand what's going on and what he needs to do.
And I think Bell Hooks actually talks a lot about that. It's the way in which men require that same compassion and love throughout their life, especially from an early age, in order to reciprocate it and in order to grow healthily in a certain way. I can't remember the name of the book right now.
But men, masculinity, and love.
Yes.
Come on, Jesse.
If we're talking about resources.
Come on, Jesse. The world to change. Come on, Jesse.
Reddit, come on. But I do think compassion, love, and just those things, people do need to be met there. But I think when it comes, I think that kind of compassion is definitely what we should do with children and grown men as well. But I think I've been met in situations where I've asked for that and the person is just no. And while it did make me upset, yes, after I went and did the work, because luckily I had more people who actually allowed me to a safe space to ask these questions. I understood why they said no. And it's because, again, especially if we're entering a space that is guided and led by women, it's because women probably feel damn tired about having to be everybody's explainer, everybody's teacher, and everybody's guider. And yes, the work we're doing is hard. Yeah, it is hard. Okay. But that's what removing the privilege that we have is. It is that hard work. Yeah. And so for me, I think more people should be more like, oh, this is the reason. I think 100%. The world's change is 100% of what I suggest to everybody when we start a conversation about men's mental health, and then I talk to them about a lot of other things. But I think that if someone tells us no from an upset perspective, and it seems like someone who is knowledgeable, we also need to respect possibly, again, why?
Yeah,
why
but-
would that person,
who's I'm genuinely asking this question. I have an answer, but it's okay if you disagree with my answer. Who's in a better position to understand why there's frustration in that conversation? The man who doesn't know anything, or the woman who's done the studies and is frustrated?
The one who's on these studies is frustrated?
Because she knows.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, and so I like to say, and I say it jokingly, but there's truth in it, right? Women have a monopoly on emotions. Y'all can't express yourselves, y'all can't say certain things and feel certain ways and not be chastised by that, right? Even if it's just amongst other women, you still can't do it. Men oftentimes can't do it around women, can't do it around men, can't do it around children. They just can't.
But I guess like that's...
So somebody has to open the door. Somebody has to say you can come in.
And I think people are saying it, but I think...
Absolutely, but it's on a small scale.
Yeah, but we're now starting.
Yeah,
And
I
think,
know. Listen, I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying I need to see more of it, and I need to see more people accepting of the nature of this week. Because you can't fight against the nature of the week.
But I think what will happen is that will happen when a lot more men start opening doors for other men, because it's those men that will, like, you understand what that feels like. Everybody here probably understands what that feels like, right? I'm sure it's happened to everyone here. But now for me, I'm like, I understand why that happened to me from both perspectives. That person's probably damn tired of teaching everybody everything, and again, women already on their own journey, they probably feel like, dog, like, I just don't want to do this today. And that's fair. And now me understanding what that feels like, having starting to do my week, I now need to start to open the door to way more men, because I feel like, and I think that's the thing, is that we now need to start opening the doors. We now need to start championing our own movement. It can't be that, like, and I feel like by depending on women to do that, it's still perpetuating all the things that work against men's mental health. Because it's like being this dependent on women to help the facilitation of emotion and help the facilitation of like us learning, when some men probably have the tools, like each one of us have the tools, each one of us have friends. We can give the tools to our friends.
And we are doing
also,
that.
and that's what I mean, it's like, it's
So
starting.
it is occurring, but again, I don't see this translating to online anytime soon without it being met with a lot of resistance and pushback. That's my entire point. It's happening. You're not gonna see it online because men, and I held back from saying this for some time, but I know men who I've told them, yeah boy, I did this work and I put it in a book and thing, whatever, and they're like, yeah, we want to see that because we meet, and only will they reveal that they have meetings amongst each other to have these sorts of discussions when they realize they've met with somebody who's on the wavelength for questioning what's currently occurring, because they know that the space isn't safe. They know that if they communicate this in the wrong spaces, people are gonna look at it like, huh? Men talking about emotions, what's that about? They're trying to, manipulate people now? Is that what they do? Right away they'd be like, this is malicious intent.
I feel like with that understanding is important, that you realize you will be met with that friction, you will be met with that resistance. It could happen on a much bigger scale, but it simply isn't. But at one point it was happening at all. So the fact that it is happening is to really protect those small spaces and understand these small spaces will affect bigger spaces. It's really a matter of time. And even with that same understanding, to me it's more about like, it's more important to get it done, So yeah, we might have to bend and twist, and yeah, it might not be ideal, and yeah, we're going to talk in certain times, certain places, but if that's what it takes, And that's where it takes for now, you know, and do what we could do until we could do better. And see what it is.
I think again, like the movement of birds, fruit on the ground. Like yes, it started online, but it's important that we translate these movements into on the ground and in communities. So that like, because the mental health of a man living in Maraval might be different to the mental health of a man living in Dago. That's like how localized these things are. And I think like once it finds its feet on the ground, like you'll be able to have those kinds of spaces. Like I think it's brilliant that it started online, but I think the more that we keep it online is the more we'll encounter the problems you're describing now. And for me that just indicates a need for it to shift onto the ground. And like I think,
but you know what I'm saying is I don't think there's even a need for it to shift on the ground because it already exists on the ground. It's not shifting from online to on the ground, it's that it is on the ground. These conversations are happening.
I don't think on a large enough scale. I don't think
but because we're now starting.
Yeah, but Dion,
No, wait, before you say that, I want to say that these things, the nature of societal change is that it takes time.
Yeah,
that's how it's always existed.
Yeah.
And this is a young movement.
Yeah.
You know, even feminism is a young movement. Feminism is about 50 years old.
Yeah, a little more than that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying you have a super highway, which for me is the internet, and maybe that's my bias as a digital native.
That's
know. But I think
what are the consequences of speed?
I mean, there's a conversation to have about the consequences of speed. My point with describing it as a super highway is that it is connecting the world. It's a tool of mass communication. I believe it's user sensitive, right? And I think that while yes, it's happening on the ground, how can we quality check the conversations that men are having in their units, in their silos on the ground? I think without the use of the internet, not just social media as a part of the internet, but the use of the internet to share resources, to share content, to share the work being done in Ghana as opposed to Trinidad, as opposed to Moscow, as opposed to Buenos Aires, right? I think yes, the groundwork is important, essential. It may even be number one, but we can't discount the internet as a tool of mass good when it is used the right way. You know, I think it is very egotistical for people to think that they don't need to use the internet. I think that's a backlash from all the toxic things that are streaming on our phones, on our laptop, and I get the urge to not want to exist in that space and to go back to a time when it's something we can control, because the internet is vastly moving out of individual control. But I think right now it is something we need to fight for, because it's not going away. We're not going to lose it unless it's like cataclysmic, something apocalyptic happens. It's here to stay. So we need to fight for the soul of the internet, especially men, because men are a huge contributor to the toxic things on social media and on the internet. You know, a lot of the people who own the infrastructure of the internet, like online newspapers, online archives, are men, because the patriarchy still exists both online and offline. So we can't allow the old guard to continue to have a monopoly and set the tone of the conversation online, because the internet is not an equal space, an open forum where all voices are heard equally. It is a place where you can very much manipulate the talking points that are seen by the majority of people through algorithm and through the decisions of people offline. So that's why offline is important, but online is equally important, because you can't convince the screen generation that offline is more important than online, because that's where they're living. You know, you'd see somebody, a child navigating a tough situation. Let's say they have a screen in front of them, or they have a person in front of them, or a toy that they're playing with, and they're trying to see, alright, I want to make this toy do something. They're not going to pick it up, move it, manipulate it. They're going to try to poke it, they're going to try to tap, they're going to try to swipe, because that's how they interact with things right now. And the point I'm trying to make with that is that we have people who are growing up as more than digital natives, whatever that term is, and we cannot let the conversation exist just offline because that's not where they live. They live online as much as online now, and whether we like that or not, or we think that's good or not, it's here, and we need to fight equally hard to bring that conversation and change the space online as offline.
So coming back to meeting people where they are.
And one thing that you said, Dion, so a little backstory. I work at a kind of like a mental health residential home, and that's one of the things that we do, meeting people where they're at, because people aren't going to know what they don't know. You know, you have to listen to what they're telling you, and then work from there. And also, why I brought that up too, I had a client who was, severely depressed, and she committed self-harm as a person. She slit her wrist. What did I bring this up on? I had a whole thing.
Something Dion said.
Yeah, something Dion said. Oh, one of the things that I learned from that experience is not to say, oh, I understand where you're coming from, because I don't. I don't know where she's coming from. I have to know that it's okay to it's okay to say that I don't know where she's coming from, because one, that's going to allow me to understand meeting her where she's at, so she can say, this happened to me and this made me feel like I need to slip my wrist in my life. You know, but if I didn't come with that understanding of I don't know where you're coming from, and being okay with saying I don't know where you're coming from, because there's a need to always want to be like, yeah man, I understand where you're coming from, but do you really understand where I'm coming from? So I 100% agree with that, is understanding wholeheartedly where people are coming from, because how we see the world is tainted by our perception, our experiences. So we can only understand from what we have been going through. No matter how much we want to empathize with other people, that tint is always going to be on, because my experiences are going to lead me to those choices. So I agree 100%. But the last question I have for you, the last question I have for you is, how do you want to be supported? Do you want support to look like coming from men, like men come together and say, this is the support that we need, this is what we need from the outside looking in? Or do you feel like society should make that support for you? I mean, that question kind of makes sense. Do you think it should be outside, inward to outward, or outward to inward in terms of support for you?
Can you repeat the question?
Ooh, Jesse, asking for much. So I can't put that on the spot.
How do you want to be supported?
Oh, I know that, but like
Yeah.
I think you made a really good with the outward to inward and the inward to outward, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think like what I always tell people is, you know, growing up, like I may have reacted to things out of things that I did not know why I was reacting that way. You know, that's the nature of being a child. I was afforded a space to react, told that was maybe the inappropriate way to react, asked why. But then what I then followed that up with is, now that I'm a man, I now need to provide that space for people. So I think it needs to be two-pronged. I think children on a whole need to have that that space to negotiate things about emotions and everything. I think grown people need it as well. But I think once we reach to a grown part, we need to take way more responsibility and accountability for things, and then provide a space whereby people can express things and then be led towards something that resembles accountability and learning and healing from that accountability. Because I think accountability is something a lot of people, men particularly, struggle with, in terms of what hurt looks like or what hurt can feel for something. It's we struggle to digest, I did that, I feel bad about that, what can I do? And I think resources is something I would like to see about just more spaces like this, for men to be able to ask other men, women, other people. I think I did X to somebody, or I did X to myself. Why do can we talk about it? And I feel that needs to, it's not just you know, you can go to this place and do this. It needs
Yeah.
to be your house, your school, and I think that's the thing. It's like it needs to be an individual change in people, and then they start to provide the space. And then individuals who are in that space start to provide other spaces, and it comes like a community towards a chain thing.
But what does support look like, or what do I want it to
Yeah.
look like? I mean, let's break it down a little bit. Starting from the external to internal, I'd like people to start taking mental health as seriously as possible. It is so frustrating to have friends and myself suffer with negative mental health, to put it broadly, and to have the emergency services not respond. To have the doctors, God bless their souls, because they are overworked and underpaid and stressed out, but have the doctors not take it seriously. To hear the orderlies mock people going through a mental health crisis. You know, I don't know if it's empathy, I can't speak to what range of problems lead to this treatment of mental health as inferior. But I want people to take it seriously, because people end up dead. And I see it like that because maybe that would shock people into understanding that it's a serious matter. But we need to understand it. We as in the government, we as in the public, we as in our communities and our elders, we need to understand, because I'm elder to some of my niece and my nephew, we need to understand that mental health is serious and we need to treat it seriously. Interpersonally and intrapersonally, what support, I think we need to be gentle with each other, to just boil it down to the main things that we can do day to day. Be gentle with each other, check in, make introspection a feature of your life. Be gentle, make introspection a feature of your life, and practice empathy. I don't know if we can solve this thing right now, but those are the three things I would want people to take from it. Ready for this question,
No, I love
So
it.
if you want some time, you know, if you need some time to break or looking for the words.
I could I'll say something.
Yeah, I know you got something to say.
What does support look like for me? I want to be received as a human being and not as a man. Because I find that there are a lot of connotations that are attached to manhood that when I say I don't identify as, I'm not saying, or identify with, when I hear those tropes of manhood or of masculinity, it does not resonate with me. I don't portray myself as that sort of individual. I'm not that sort of individual. But oftentimes, because we have these lenses through which we perceive men and masculinity, we face all men as such. You know, I just want to be human. You know, and I want people to understand that it is possible to meet me as a human being, and for us to simply discuss as a human being. There will come a point in the conversation, because we live in a society that we now have to talk about men and manhood, and that's cool. But once we start at humanhood, then we can understand that manhood is a subset of that. We're just talking about my lived experience. We're just talking about how I feel because of what has happened to me, or what someone did to me, or whatever. I'm feeling right now. I just need to talk about how I feel right now. I just need somebody to listen, and then I need somebody to tell me that it's gonna be okay. And then I need to not be, I guess, viewed as negatively for crying, as a result of me feeling however I feel in this moment, you know. And I get that in certain spaces, but I wish that it could be received a lot better in more spaces. So yeah, that's my thing.
I think what I feel like I need would be just to feel heard. Regardless of space, whether it's inward, outward, just to feel heard. I feel like it's important just for mental health as a whole that, as you're saying, as a human being, even to just feel like what you are feeling is heard and understood. And for inward, for me, I would say I would want to just live mindfully and with intention. I just feel like that's just my mantra in life. Just to live mindfully and with intent at all times. Yeah, simply put.
Good on that. When you first asked the question, my mind kind of formed an image, and support therefore looks, it's like twofold. It's in two parts, right? So the first part of support for me, or that I would like, or that I first need, is understanding. So I think about the word understand, and I think about standing under something, right? So let's say this is the topic of mental health here. The first thing, you have to come and stand here with me and view this thing with me. Understand that I am seeing this thing as important, understand what it looks like to me. And when you're able to share that space with me, that is a form of support. So being in that space and allowing me to observe this thing, feel this thing, speak on this thing, that's the first aspect of support. But then after we stand under it, how do we get on top of it? How do we begin to manage it? And I think that's a step up. And if you think about a step up and a step out, that is where the support would look like a physical, it's a physical or tangible form. So be it that we go and do an activity together, be it that we step out of that space and go into a new environment, and activity then becomes a part of it. I think that's how we then move out of the space, because one thing to talk and one thing to understand, but if you talk and you don't move, you will be talking about the same thing, you're seeing the same thing, doing the same things, you know. So it's easier said than done, but the internal aspect of that is you having a specific understanding of what you need in that moment and being able to communicate that, because sometimes you need that space, sometimes you need that shoulder, but then there are other times you need to do something. So there are times when, if a partner says, if I want to talk about it, we could talk about it, but that would really be the best thing right now. Let's go and sweat, or let's go and swim, or let's go and do something in which I'm now able to leave that behind and kind of step over it, step away from it because I've dealt with it. So it's really knowing how to gauge that, but that's what support would look like for me.
Oh wow, thank you all for sharing all of that. One thing I really did want to say to you was like, I don't even know what to say, but just say thank you. Because you know, like, start coming into this space and sharing your personal experiences is bravery. You know, because a lot of times we, no matter what we identify as, within man, woman, or non-binary, that's one of the things that I want us to have, is to be able to feel seen and heard. Because I know how it feels to not be seen and heard. My personhood sometimes has not been seen and heard, which then leads me to start thinking, you know, negatively about myself or whatever the case may be. So I just wanted to provide this space for you and say thank you for sharing this with me, because you didn't have to. You know, you definitely didn't have to. You all did. And you all gave me a lot of understanding in terms of what it means to give support to men, or just to give support in general. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To me, it's exciting. I tell you, this after last time I told somebody this, that we are now in these spaces that we once envisioned, talking about the things that we thought we couldn't speak on. To be able to do that with people that you went to school with, that you went party with, that you know, understand your reality. That's a big blessing. That's a big blessing. So we really experiencing today as we envisioned it yesterday. Maybe not as exactly as we envisioned it, but thank you for doing that and for being that. And you're an amazing facilitator. And I was from since the first time around. So definitely continue doing the work. And once again people are given the space to speak, they will speak.
Yeah.
So it's for us to continue to put out the call, and who answers, who doesn't. But we'll be there to make the calls, and we'll be there to answer them same way. So.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Are you hungry?
Could do it next 2-3 cheese.
There's also pale out if you want some too.
Yeah, or they get out cheese sandwiches here, cheese bits.
Yeah. So, I mean, you want some?
Yeah.